Parents stole my wedding money for sister. I was uninvited and left forever. Her wedding collapsed and they begged me to return. You're not seriously going through with this wedding, are you? Your sister's is going to be so much nicer. Those were my mother's exact words as I sat at our family dining table, showing her the invitation samples for my upcoming wedding. Not congratulations, not I'm happy for you, but a comparison, another exhausting, painful comparison to my sister Amber. I stared at the cream-colored cardstock in my hands, tracing my fingers over the embossed lettering that spelled out my name, Jessica, and my fiancé, Mark's. I'd spent weeks choosing these, imagining our guests opening them with smiles, but apparently they weren't good enough. Nothing about my wedding was going to be good enough. Mom, Mark and I want something intimate. Just because it's not at the Plaza Hotel doesn't mean it's not special. Duri, she sighed, that signature sigh of hers, the one that somehow managed to convey disappointment, irritation, and martyrdom all at once. My stomach tightened in that familiar way, a physical response to the emotional beatdown I'd experienced my entire life. Well, your father and I have been thinking. Since Amber's wedding is only 3 months after yours, and she's marrying into the Thompsons, you know, Richard's family owns half of downtown, we think it makes more sense to reallocate some of the wedding money. My stomach dropped. I could actually feel the blood draining from my face. Reallocate? What does that mean exactly? Honey, your sister needs this wedding to be perfect. The Thompsons expect a certain standard. We're going to need the money we set aside for your wedding to help with hers. Whoa, I felt like I'd been slapped. For years, my parents had promised both of us daughters the same amount for our weddings. $20,000 each, not a fortune, but enough to create a beautiful day. It was the one time I thought I'd finally be treated equally. So I get nothing? After you promised? My mother reached across the table and patted my hand like I was a disappointed child who couldn't have ice cream. Don't be dramatic, sweetie. You and Mark make good money. You've always been the independent one, the strong one. Amber needs more help than you do. She always has. The strong one. That's what they always called me when they needed an excuse to give Amber everything and me nothing. I was resilient, self-sufficient, mature, all code words for, we're going to keep taking advantage of you and expect you to be fine with it. I'd watched this pattern my entire life. When we were kids, Amber got elaborate birthday parties with pony rides and bouncy castles, while I got a cake from the grocery store and was told to be grateful. When I turned 16, I got a used bike while Amber received a brand new car on her 16th. For graduation, Amber got a European trip. I got a watch and a speech about responsibility. I still remembered my 8th birthday. I'd begged for a party at the local pizza place, just like all my friends had. Instead, my mother made a box cake and invited 2 neighbors' kids over. Meanwhile, she spent weeks planning Amber's underwater-themed extravaganza, complete with a professional mermaid performer. When I cried, my father took me aside and explained, "Your sister needs more attention. She's not as strong as you are. You understand, don't you?" And I did understand, even at 8. I understood that nothing I did would ever be as important as Amber's smallest achievement. I understood that my role was to make things easier for everyone else. But this, taking the money they'd promised for the biggest day of my life and giving it to my sister, this was a new low, even for them. I need to go, I said, gathering my invitation samples with shaking hands. Jessica, don't be like this. Family supports each other. Your sister would do the same for you. I almost laughed. Amber had never done anything for me in her entire life. The last time I'd moved apartments, I'd asked her to help pack. She showed up 3 hours late, stayed for 20 minutes to take Instagram photos of my cute moving boxes, then left to get her nails done. When I was hospitalized with appendicitis 2 years ago, she sent a text, "Get well soon. Can't visit, allergic to hospitals lol." Sure, Mom. Whatever you say. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text. Speak of the devil? It was Amber. OMG, Jess! Mom just told me the amazing news about the wedding budget. Thank you so much. BTW need to talk to you about something important. Call me. I didn't call her. I didn't have the emotional energy. But 2 days later, she called me. Hey sis. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the way it always got when she wanted something. So listen, Richard and I were going over the guest list with the wedding planner and we're having to make some really tough cuts. Tough cuts? I repeated, already feeling sick about where this was heading. Yeah, I mean, his family has so many important people that need to be there. The governor might even come. And we just don't think you'd be comfortable there. All those high society people, you know. It's not really your scene. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Are you uninviting me to your wedding? The wedding that my money is paying for? There was a pause, then a nervous laugh. Don't be so dramatic, Jess. I'm not uninviting you. I'm just helping you avoid an uncomfortable situation. You'd feel so out of place. Trust me, I'm doing you a favor. In that moment, something inside me broke. It wasn't just anger or hurt. It was the final thread connecting me to the fantasy that my family would ever treat me with basic decency or respect. You know what, Amber? You're right. I wouldn't be comfortable there. In fact, I don't think I'd be comfortable anywhere near you or mom or dad ever again. What? Don't be ridiculous. What will people say if my own sister isn't at my wedding? I laughed. A real laugh this time because the absurdity was actually becoming funny. I don't know, Amber. Maybe you can tell them I couldn't afford the right clothes, or that I was too busy working to support myself, unlike some people. Get creative. I hung up before she could respond and turned my phone off completely. For the first time in my life, I felt something new alongside the familiar pain and resentment. Freedom. I was done being the family doormat. Done being the responsible one who always forgave, always understood, always sacrificed. What happened next would change my life forever, but not in the way my family ever could have predicted. The next morning, I called Mark. We'd been planning our wedding for over a year, pouring our hearts and savings into creating a day that represented us, simple, meaningful, surrounded by people who truly loved us. Now, it was all tainted. I can't do this, I told him, my voice surprisingly steady. Not the wedding, not my family, none of it. Mark was silent for a long moment. I could hear him breathing on the other end, processing what I'd just said. My heart raced. What if he thought I was overreacting too? Are you saying you want to cancel the wedding? He finally asked, his voice careful. Yes, no. I took a deep breath. I still want to marry you, more than anything, but I can't do this big event, not with them, not now. Another silence. Jess, we've put down deposits. We've sent save the dates. People have booked flights. I felt a flicker of doubt. Was I being impulsive? Dramatic? Maybe my mother was right. Maybe I was overreacting. I know, I whispered. I know it's a lot to ask. If you want to go through with it as planned, I'll understand. But I can't keep pretending everything's okay. They took our wedding money and gave it to Amber, and then she uninvited me to her wedding. My own sister, Mark. And they've always been like this. Always. I heard him sigh, then the rustle of movement. I could picture him running his hand through his hair the way he did when he was thinking. What do you need, Jess? He finally asked. What do you want to do instead? The knot in my chest loosened slightly. I want to leave, start somewhere new where my family can't reach me, and I want to marry you but on our terms. Something small, private, just about us. Okay, he said simply. Where are we going? I felt tears spring to my eyes at the we. I'd been half expecting him to push back, to tell me I needed to work things out with my family, that I couldn't just run away from my problems. That's what everyone had always told me, that I needed to be understanding, patient, forgiving. "You're okay with this?" I asked, my voice small. "Jess, I've watched for 3 years how they treat you, how they take and never give back, how you make excuses for them, how you shrink yourself around them. I've wanted to say something 1,000 times, but it wasn't my place." He paused. "I love you. If you need to burn this bridge, I'll hand you the matches." I burst into tears. Tears of relief, of being truly seen and understood maybe for the first time in my life. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. We canceled vendors, forfeiting deposits we couldn't afford to lose. We called guests to explain that the wedding was off, spinning a story about wanting something more intimate. Mark put in for a transfer at his company's Seattle office, something he'd considered before but never pursued because of my family ties in Boston. I applied for jobs remotely, securing a position at a marketing firm that paid less than my current job, but offered the freedom I desperately needed. We found a small apartment online, in a neighborhood we'd never seen, in a city where we knew no one. We told no one except our closest friends. People we knew wouldn't leak our plans to my family. The financial strain was immediate. We'd lost thousands in deposits. The move would cost thousands more. Mark's transfer meant a slight pay cut. My new job paid 30% less than my current one. We'd be starting over with nothing. "We can wait," Mark offered one night as we looked at our dwindling savings. "Save up for a few more months. Plan better." I shook my head. "If we wait, I'll lose my nerve. They'll wear me down like they always do. We have to go now." The day before we were set to leave, my mother called. "Jessica, this silent treatment is childish. Your sister is very upset that you're being so difficult about the wedding. She's under a lot of stress, you know." I almost broke then, almost fell back into the old pattern of apologizing, understanding, sacrificing. But then I remembered Amber's casual dismissal. "We don't think you'd be comfortable there." "I'm sorry you feel that way, Mom," I said calmly. "I have to go now." "Jessica Marie Wilson, don't you dare hang up on..." I ended the call and blocked her number. Then I blocked my father's, Amber's, and even a few extended family members who I knew would be enlisted to talk sense into me. My hand shook as I put down the phone. A lifetime of conditioning screamed at me that I was being disrespectful, ungrateful, dramatic. I felt physically ill, my body rebelling against the boundary I'd just set. "Are you okay?" Mark asked, finding me hunched over the toilet, dry heaving from anxiety. "No," I admitted, "but I will be." The next morning, Mark and I loaded our car and drove away from Boston, heading across the country to our new life in Seattle. Each mile put between us and my family felt like a weight lifting, like I could finally breathe. Seattle welcomed us with its famous rain and unfamiliar streets, both of which felt cleansing somehow. Our apartment was small but bright, with large windows overlooking a park. We'd brought minimal furniture, just enough to get by until we could gradually build our home together. Reality hit hard in those first weeks. Our budget was tighter than we'd anticipated. Moving expenses had depleted our savings. Mark's transfer took longer than expected to process, leaving him without a paycheck for 3 weeks. My new job was demanding, with a steep learning curve and a boss who seemed perpetually unimpressed. "Maybe we made a mistake," I whispered one night, sitting on our air mattress because we couldn't yet afford a real bed. "Maybe we should have planned better." Mark pulled me closer. "Do you regret leaving?" I thought about it, honestly. "No, I regret not having more money saved. I regret the timing, but I don't regret leaving." "Then we didn't make a mistake. We'll figure this out." And slowly, we did. Mark's transfer finally processed. I adjusted to my new job. We found a weekend farmer's market where we could buy affordable groceries. We made a game of furnishing our apartment with thrift store finds, each piece a small victory. My new job was challenging but rewarding. For the first time, I wasn't constantly checking my phone for crisis calls from family members. I wasn't bracing for the next comparison, the next demand, the next reminder that I would always come second. Woo, but freedom came with its own kind of pain. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, from dreams where my mother was disappointed in me, where Amber was crying because I'd abandoned her, where my father looked at me with disgust. I'd never realized how deeply their approval was wired into my sense of self-worth. You need to talk to someone, Mark urged after a particularly bad night. A professional. We can't afford it, I reminded him. We'll find a way. This is important. He was right. I found a therapist who offered sliding scale fees and slowly, painfully, began unpacking a lifetime of emotional manipulation and conditional love. 3 weeks after we moved, I finally turned my phone back on to a barrage of voicemails. Mom. Jessica, this behavior is unacceptable. Call me immediately. Dad. Your mother is very upset. You know how she gets. Just call us, Jessie. Amber. OMG, Jess, where are you? Mom is freaking out and I need help with my wedding planning. Aunt Paula. Jessica, sweetie, everyone's worried sick. Whatever is going on, I'm sure we can fix it as a family. I deleted them all without responding and changed my number the next day. The relief was immediate but tinged with grief. I was mourning the family I'd always wanted, but never had. Mark and I settled into our new life with a cautious optimism. We found a little coffee shop where the barista remembered our orders. We made acquaintances at the dog park, though neither of us had a dog. We explored our new city on foot, unable to afford much entertainment but finding joy in discovery. The financial strain continued. Some weeks we had to choose between electricity and groceries. I took on freelance work on weekends. Mark picked up odd jobs through TaskRabbit. We fought sometimes, small stress-induced spats about money, about chores, about the uncertainty of our future. Maybe you should call your parents, Mark suggested during one particularly tight month. Not to go back, but just, they have money, Jess. They owe you. No, I said firmly. We'll figure it out ourselves. Oh, and we did. Slowly, things improved. I got a small raise. Mark found a better position within his company. We replaced the air mattress with a real bed. We bought a small dining table. Each small victory felt enormous. 6 months passed in this gradually improving reality. We had a small private ceremony at a beautiful overlook in Olympic National Park, just us and 2 close friends we'd met as witnesses. It wasn't the wedding we had originally planned, but it was perfect in its simplicity and sincerity. I wore a dress from a consignment shop. Mark wore the one good suit he'd brought from Boston. Our rings were simple bands we'd found at a local jewelry maker's studio. I sometimes thought about my family, wondered if they were still searching for me or if they'd written me off as the ungrateful daughter who abandoned them. But those thoughts came less and less frequently as I built a life based on mutual respect and genuine love. Then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, I got an email from my cousin Rachel, the only family member whose contact information I'd kept. Jess, I know you probably don't want to hear anything about family, but I thought you should know. Amber's wedding was a disaster. Richard left her at the altar, literally walked out during the ceremony after some huge fight. Everyone's blaming everyone else. Your parents are a mess. They've been trying to find you for months. Just thought you should know. Hope you're well. Love, Rachel. I stared at the screen, a strange mixture of emotions washing over me. There was no satisfaction in my sister's pain. I wasn't that person. But there was a certain poetic justice to the situation. The perfect wedding they had sacrificed me for had imploded spectacularly. What happened next would test my resolve in ways I never expected. I showed Rachel's email to Mark that evening. Are you okay? He asked, always attuned to my feelings. Honestly, I don't know what I feel, I admitted. Not happy about her pain, but not exactly sad either. Just distant from it all, like I'm reading about strangers. He nodded, understanding as always. Do you want to respond? I thought about it, then shook my head. No, that part of my life is over. Or so I thought. 2 weeks later, I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. I'd had the dream again, the one where I was a child, standing in our family living room while my parents and sister laughed and opened Christmas presents without noticing I was there. In the dream, I screamed and screamed, but no sound came out. I was invisible. "Same dream?" Mark asked, his voice groggy with sleep. I nodded, wiping tears from my face. "I thought they'd stop by now." He pulled me close. "Maybe they won't until you really deal with what happened. You've been running, Jess. That's not the same as healing." I knew he was right. Despite the therapy, despite the distance, despite the new life we were building, I hadn't truly confronted what my family had done. I'd just escaped it. The next day, I received another email from Rachel. "I don't know how, but your parents hired someone to find you. They know you're in Seattle. I thought you should have a heads up. They're talking about flying out there. Be prepared." Panic surged through me. I immediately called our apartment building's management and asked them not to confirm whether we lived there to anyone. I was vague about the reasons, mentioning only family issues, but the sympathetic manager seemed to understand. "We'll make sure your privacy is protected," she assured me. That weekend, I came down with what I thought was a bad cold. By Monday, I was in the emergency room with severe pneumonia, struggling to breathe. 3 days in the hospital turned into a week as the infection refused to respond to the first round of antibiotics. Mark barely left my side, sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair, advocating with doctors, managing my medications, but I could see the strain it was putting on him, missing work, barely sleeping, worrying constantly. "You should go home, get some rest," I urged during a moment of clarity between fever spikes. "I'm not leaving you," he said firmly, though his eyes were rimmed with exhaustion. In my feverish state, I found myself thinking about family, about who shows up when you're at your worst. Mark was here, unwavering. My blood relatives, who had always claimed family was everything, were nowhere to be found. Not that they knew I was sick, but would it have made a difference? The fever broke on the 8th day, and I was finally released with a prescription for strong antibiotics and strict instructions to rest. Mark helped me into our apartment, now filled with get-well cards and small gifts from my co-workers and our new friends, people who'd known me less than a year but had shown more care than my family had in a lifetime. "You know what's strange?" I said as Mark helped me into bed. "I keep thinking about how if this had happened in Boston, my family would have made it all about them. Mom would have been at the hospital, but mostly to complain about how my illness was inconveniencing her. Dad would have paid the bills, but reminded me about it for years. Amber would have posted on Instagram about being the supportive sister without actually helping." Mark smiled sadly. "Sometimes it takes distance to see patterns clearly. 3 days after I returned home, it happened. I was home alone, Mark having finally returned to work, when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and in my weakened state, I cautiously approached and looked through the peephole. My heart stopped. My mother and father stood in the hallway, looking nervous and out of place. I backed away from the door silently, my legs trembling. I wasn't ready for this. Not now, not when I was physically weak and emotionally vulnerable. I retreated to the bedroom and called Mark. "They're here," I whispered, though I knew they couldn't hear me through the door. "My parents, at our apartment." "Shit," he said. "I'm coming home. Don't answer if you don't want to." "I can't just hide," I said, surprisingly myself. "They'll just keep coming back." "Are you sure? You're still recovering." "No, but I need to do this." I hung up and took a deep breath, steadying myself. Then I opened the door. My mother gasped when she saw me, her hand flying to her mouth. "Jessica, my God, you look terrible. Are you sick?" Not "I've missed you" or "I'm sorry," just criticism, right out of the gate. "Pneumonia," I said simply, not opening the door any wider. "What are you doing here?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "We've been worried. You disappeared." I moved. There's a difference. My mother pushed forward slightly. Can we come in? We've come all this way. I hesitated, then stepped back. 20 minutes. That's all I can handle right now. They entered cautiously, taking in our small apartment with barely concealed judgment. My mother's eyes lingered on our thrift store furniture, our DIY art projects, the general modesty of our home. This is cozy, she said, in the tone she used for things she found deeply inadequate. It's home, I replied, lowering myself carefully onto the couch. The short conversation had already drained my limited energy. You really are sick, my father observed, concern finally registering. Have you seen a doctor? I was in the hospital for 8 days, just got out. My mother's expression shifted. 8 days? Why didn't you call us? We would have come sooner. That's exactly why I didn't call. An uncomfortable silence fell. My parents perched awkwardly on the edge of our second-hand chairs, looking like visiting royalty in a peasant's hut. Amber's wedding was a disaster, my mother finally said. I heard. She's devastated, barely leaves her room, won't talk to anyone. We thought you might be able to help her. You two were always so close. I nearly laughed, but it would have triggered a coughing fit. Close? Mom, you can't seriously believe that. Of course you were close, she insisted, her voice rising slightly. Sisters have little fights, but… She uninvited me from her wedding, I interrupted, feeling my limited strength draining with each word. The wedding you took my money to pay for. That's not a little fight. My father shifted uncomfortably. About the money. We want to make that right. We can pay you back. With interest. I studied them both, suddenly understanding. You're in debt from the wedding, aren't you? A wedding that never even happened. And now you want me, responsible, reliable Jessica, to come fix everything. Pay off Amber's debts. Counsel her through her heartbreak. Make it all better like I always did. My mother's face flushed. That's not fair. Oh, isn't it? I leaned forward, ignoring the pain in my chest. Let me ask you something. If Amber's wedding had gone perfectly, if she were happily married right now, would you be sitting here? Would you have hired someone to find me? Their silence was answer enough. I thought so, I said, fighting a wave of exhaustion. I'm sorry Amber is hurting, I truly am. But I'm not coming back to be the family emotional support animal anymore. I have my own life now. Jessica, please. My mother grabbed my wrist. We made mistakes. We see that now. But we're still your parents. We love you. For the first time in our conversation, I saw genuine emotion in her eyes. Not manipulation, not performance, but real fear of losing me forever. I gently removed her hand. If you love me, you'll respect my decision. I need time and space. A lot of it. Maybe someday we can have some kind of relationship, but it will never be what it was before. I won't let it be. Just then, the door opened, and Mark rushed in, his face tense with worry. He stopped short when he saw my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, he said, his voice carefully neutral. My father stood. Mark, good to see you. He extended his hand, which Mark ignored, moving instead to my side. You okay? He asked me softly. Just tired, I whispered. He turned to my parents, his expression hardening. I think Jess needs to rest now. Pneumonia takes a lot out of you. My mother looked like she wanted to protest, but my father placed a hand on her shoulder. Of course. We'll go. He pulled a business card from his pocket and placed it on the coffee table. Our hotel information. We're here for 3 more days. If you change your mind… Thank you for stopping by, I said formally, using the last of my strength to stand. I need to rest now. They left reluctantly, my mother looking back several times as if memorizing my face. When the door closed behind them, I collapsed back onto the couch, physically and emotionally drained. "That was intense," Mark said, sitting beside me. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," I admitted. "But also relieved?" I kept expecting to feel guilty or to cave, but I didn't. I held my ground. He smiled, brushing hair from my forehead. "I'm proud of you." That night, I had the dream again, the one where I was invisible to my family. But this time, something changed. In the dream, I turned away from the scene, walked out the front door, and found myself in a field of wildflowers under a vast blue sky. I could breathe. I awoke feeling lighter, as if something had shifted within me. The next day, we received a call from our building manager. "Your visitors left something for you," she said. At the front desk was an envelope with my name on it. Inside was a check for twice the amount of my wedding fund, along with a note in my father's handwriting. "We were wrong. This doesn't fix it, but it's a start. The door is open when you're ready." I stared at the check, conflicted. On one hand, it was an acknowledgement of their wrongdoing, something I'd never received before. On the other hand, it felt like another attempt to buy my compliance, to resolve with money what required actual change. "What do you think?" I asked Mark. He studied the check. "It's your decision, but I'd say take it. They owe you this and more." After much thought, I deposited the check, but didn't respond to the note. The money helped tremendously. We paid off the hospital bills, bought real furniture, and even started a small emergency fund. But I wasn't ready to reopen communication. The pneumonia took weeks to fully recover from. During that time, I continued therapy, now focusing not just on setting boundaries, but on truly understanding the family dynamics that had shaped me. I began to see how my parents had created a system that pitted Amber and me against each other, her as the fragile, special one who needed everything handed to her, me as the strong, reliable one who needed nothing. Neither role had done us any favors. Over the next year, our life in Seattle blossomed. I was promoted at work. Mark's career took off. We bought a small house with a garden where I grew vegetables and flowers, a simple pleasure I'd never had time for before. We made deep friendships, joined a community theater group, adopted a rescue dog named Benny who became our furry child. Occasionally, my family would reach out through Rachel, holiday greetings, news updates, careful messages that never pushed too hard for a response. I acknowledged them but maintained my distance. Then, 18 months after we'd left Boston, I received another email from Rachel with the subject line, "Amber wants to apologize." "Amber's been in therapy," Rachel's email explained. "Real therapy, not the kind where she goes once and decides she's cured. She's been going weekly for almost a year. She's different, Jess. She asked for your contact info, but I said I'd pass along a message first." Attached was a letter from my sister. I hesitated before opening it, bracing myself for excuses or subtle manipulation. What I found instead surprised me. "Dear Jessica, I don't know if you'll read this, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, but I need to say these things even if they never reach you. Newell, I treated you terribly, not just with the wedding, but for our entire lives. I took advantage of your kindness, your responsibility, your love. I was selfish and entitled and cruel. There are no excuses for how I behaved, though I've spent a lot of time in therapy understanding why I was that way. Mom and Dad set us up in those roles. You as the responsible one, me as the fragile one who needed everything handed to her. But I leaned into it. I exploited it. And I hurt you. The wedding was rock bottom for me. After Richard left me at the altar, turns out he'd been cheating the entire time, karma, I guess. I had a complete breakdown. I couldn't understand why my perfect life had fallen apart. My therapist helped me see that it was never perfect. It was built on using other people, including you. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a response. But you deserve to hear that I know what I did. I'm deeply sorry for all of it, and I'm working to become someone better. With love and regret, Amber. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. They weren't tears of sadness or even forgiveness. They were tears of validation. After a lifetime of being told I was overreacting, too sensitive, making things up, here was acknowledgement of the truth. I showed the letter to Mark, who read it carefully. "Do you want to respond?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "I need to think about this." I took the letter to my next therapy session, where my therapist and I dissected it. "It seems genuine," she observed. "But the real test will be whether her actions match her words over time." "I'm afraid," I admitted. Afraid to let them back in, even a little. What if nothing's really changed? What if I get hurt again? "That's a valid fear," she said. "But what if you approach this differently? Not as the daughter or sister hoping for love and approval, but as an adult with clear boundaries who decides what kind of relationship you want, if any." It was a perspective shift I needed to hear. For so long I'd been trying to earn their love, trying to be good enough. What if I accepted that their capacity to love properly was limited, but still chose to have some kind of relationship on my terms? A week later, my phone rang with a Boston area code I didn't recognize. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Hello? Jessica? It's Dad." My heart skipped. "How did you get this number?" "Rachel," he admitted. "Please don't be angry with her. We've been in therapy too, family therapy, all 3 of us." I said nothing, waiting. "I'm not calling to pressure you," he continued, his voice different somehow, humbler. "I just wanted to tell you that we're selling the house, the big one you grew up in. It's too empty now, and honestly, too full of mistakes. We're downsizing to a condo." "Why are you telling me this?" He paused. "Because we found some of your things in the attic. School projects, awards, notebooks. Things we should have celebrated but didn't. I wanted to know if you'd like us to send them to you, or if you'd prefer we donate them." Such a simple question, but loaded with meaning. Did I want these pieces of my past, or was I truly ready to let them go? "You can send them," I said finally. "Thank you," he replied, audible relief in his voice. "And Jessica, we're proud of you. We should have told you that every day of your life." After we hung up, I sat on our back porch, watching Benny chase butterflies in the garden. Mark brought me tea and sat beside me in comfortable silence. "I think I'm ready to forgive them," I said eventually. "Not for them, for me." He squeezed my hand. "I'll support whatever you decide." 2 weeks later, a package arrived containing my childhood mementos along with recent photos of my parents and Amber, thinner, older, but smiling hesitantly at the camera. There was a note. "Whenever you're ready, we'd love to meet the man who stands by you better than we did. We promise to listen more than we talk." I found myself studying the photos, looking for signs of the people I remembered. My mother's face seemed softer somehow, the hard lines of judgment less pronounced. My father looked smaller, less imposing. Amber looked different. Her perfect makeup and carefully crafted social media appearance were gone, replaced by a more natural look, a more genuine smile. I took a deep breath and made a decision that terrified me. I wrote back to Amber first, a short email acknowledging her apology and sharing a little about my life in Seattle. Her response came quickly, too quickly, making me wonder if she'd been waiting by her computer. "Jess, thank you for writing back. I didn't expect it. I don't deserve it. If you ever want to talk, even just to tell me all the ways I hurt you, I'm here. I'm trying to be better." Over the next several months, we established a cautious long-distance relationship. Occasional emails that gradually became more frequent, then brief phone calls. The first call was awkward, stilted. I found myself slipping into old patterns, being careful not to upset her, taking responsibility for the conversation. "I'm sorry," Amber said suddenly in the middle of a mundane exchange about the weather. "I can hear myself doing it again, making this all about me. How are you really, Jess? Tell me about your life. It was such a simple thing, but it stopped me cold. When had Amber ever asked about my life and actually listened? Our conversations slowly became more real. She told me about her therapy journey, about confronting our parents about their favoritism, about her own struggles with self-worth that had been masked by entitlement. I always thought you had it all together, she confessed during one call, that you didn't need anything from anyone. I was so jealous of your strength, your independence. I never realized it was because you'd never been given a choice. My parents were slower to change. My mother still occasionally slipped into old patterns, making subtle comparisons, inserting little digs disguised as concern. But now when she did, my father would gently call her out, or she'd catch herself and apologize. Old habits, she explained during one strained phone call after making a comment about my little house in Seattle. I'm trying, Jessica. I really am. I know, Mom, I said, and for the first time, I actually believed her. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were setbacks. A particularly difficult call where my mother reverted to her old self when discussing holiday plans. A painful email exchange where my father defended past decisions. Each time, I had to decide whether to engage or step back, whether to explain my hurt or protect myself. It's exhausting, I told Mark after a particularly difficult conversation. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. Only you can answer that, he said. But I've noticed something. You don't have nightmares as often. You seem lighter. He was right. The process of cautiously rebuilding these relationships, as draining as it sometimes was, had begun to heal something in me. Not because they were changing, though they were trying, but because I was. I was no longer the desperate daughter seeking approval, the reliable sister picking up everyone's pieces. I was an adult with boundaries, with the power to engage or disengage on my terms. A year later, Mark and I decided we were ready to invite them to Seattle. Not to stay with us, I wasn't there yet, but to visit for a weekend, stay in a hotel, meet on neutral ground. I was a nervous wreck the day they arrived. I cleaned our house obsessively, then worried it still wasn't good enough. I changed outfits 5 times, wanting to look successful, but not like I was trying too hard. Breathe, Mark reminded me. Remember, you're not auditioning for their approval anymore. This is your home, your life, and they're the guests. They arrived looking as nervous as I felt. My mother had brought flowers, not an elaborate arrangement that would make me feel inadequate, but simple daisies, my childhood favorite. Your home is lovely, she said, and for once, there was no undercurrent of judgment. The weekend was awkward, emotional, but ultimately healing. My parents seemed genuinely changed, more reflective, less controlling. Amber was almost unrecognizable in her humility and self-awareness. They all adored Mark, admired our home, and never once suggested we should move back east. There was one difficult moment. My mother made a comment about how, now that Jessica has proved her point, perhaps we could consider moving back to Boston. I tensed, waiting for the familiar manipulation to follow. Instead, Amber surprised me. Mom, she said firmly, Jess didn't leave to prove a point. She left because we hurt her, repeatedly, for years. She's built a beautiful life here. We should be grateful she's letting us visit at all. My mother looked startled, then ashamed. You're right, of course. I'm sorry, Jessica. Old habits. As they were leaving, my mother hugged me gently. Thank you for giving us a second chance, she whispered. You were always the strongest of us all. Not strongest, I corrected her. Just the first to demand respect. That night, after they'd gone, Mark and I sat in our garden watching the sunset over the distant mountains. Do you regret it? He asked. Walking away, starting over? I thought about the question carefully. No, I said finally. I regret that it took me so long to do it. Sometimes the only way to be truly seen is to disappear until people realize what they've lost. 3 years have passed since that first visit. Our relationship with my family isn't perfect, but it's authentic in a way it never was before. We visit Boston occasionally. They come to Seattle once a year. We talk on the phone every few weeks. The difference is that now, these interactions are by choice, not obligation. My parents have truly downsized their lives, not just their home, but their social ambitions. They volunteer at a local crisis center, something they would have considered beneath them in their previous life. My father told me recently that helping people who are genuinely struggling has put his own problems in perspective. "I wish I'd understood sooner what we were doing to you," he said during a rare, vulnerable moment. "I was raised to believe that pushing children made them stronger. My father never praised me, never showed weakness. I thought I was being a good parent by teaching you resilience. By treating me differently than Amber?" I asked. He looked away, ashamed. "We convinced ourselves you didn't need what she did, that you were naturally stronger. It was easier than admitting we were failing you both in different ways." Amber completed her degree in social work and now counsels young women dealing with family trauma. The irony isn't lost on any of us, but her experience has given her insight that helps others. She's dating someone new, a kind, unassuming teacher who values her for who she is, not what she can offer socially. "I still catch myself sometimes," she admitted during her last visit, "expecting special treatment, thinking I'm entitled to more. I have to consciously remind myself that's not who I want to be anymore. As for Mark and me, we're expecting our first child in the spring. When we told my family, they were thrilled but careful not to overstep. My mother asked if I wanted her to come help after the baby is born, but immediately added, 'Only if you want, of course. It's entirely your decision.' Small things, these considerations, but they represent a monumental shift in our family dynamic. The pregnancy has brought up unexpected fears. Late at night, I sometimes wake in a cold sweat, terrified that I'll repeat the patterns of my upbringing. "What if I play favorites?" I whispered to Mark one night. "What if I do to our children what was done to me?" "The fact that you're worried about it means you won't," he assured me. "We'll watch each other, hold each other accountable. We'll break the cycle." I'm not completely convinced. These patterns run deep, and awareness doesn't automatically translate to change. But I'm committed to doing the work, in therapy, in self-reflection, in honest conversations with Mark. Sometimes I think about that devastated bride whose wedding imploded so spectacularly, or the dutiful daughter who let her wedding fund be stolen without a real fight. They feel like different people now, characters in a story I've moved beyond. The night before that fateful meeting when my parents showed up in Seattle, I wrote in my journal, "I'm afraid I'll cave, that I'll see them and all my resolve will melt away, that I'll go back to being the person who always forgives, always understands, always sacrifices." I didn't cave, I held my ground, and because I did, because I finally valued myself enough to walk away, I created the space for a healthier relationship to potentially grow. There are still moments of grief for what I lost, or rather, for what I never had. The unconditional love, the support, the feeling of being valued just for being me. I'll never get that childhood back. I'll never have the relationship with my parents that some people take for granted. But I've gained something perhaps more valuable, the knowledge that I can survive without their approval, the confidence to set boundaries and hold them, the ability to build a life on my own terms, and most importantly, the wisdom to recognize genuine change when it happens. Not everyone gets that opportunity with their family. Some bridges stay burned, and that's okay too. The most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself, and sometimes protecting that relationship means leaving behind people who can't or won't respect your worth. If you're standing where I once stood, torn between family loyalty and self-respect, know this: you are not selfish for expecting basic decency. You are not overreacting to persistent disrespect. And you are absolutely not obligated to keep people in your life who consistently show they don't value you, even if those people are family. The hardest thing I've ever done was walking away from my family. The best thing I've ever done was creating enough distance that they had to see me, really see me, for the first time. Sometimes leaving is the only way to be loved as you deserve.